All right, welcome everybody. We're going to talk about documenting unable to locate equipment. So when you have equipment that you're trying to perform PMs on, how do you make sure you're keeping track of how many times you look for it and all the details that go along with that. My name's Joe Stockman. I'm with FSI. I'm the director of product there at FSI. I've worked over 30, I hate to say this slide, but over 30 years in healthcare CMMSs. For a number of different CMMS companies, including Four Rivers, Teletracking, if any of them use those for RTLS, FSI, where I'm currently at, where I've been at for 23 years now. Also done some consulting. I've also done asset inventory, where we walk around the hospital locating equipment, putting the tags on them for the hospitals. Lots of end user training and then data conversions between different CMMSs. So I've seen a lot of data. I've seen a lot of hospitals on the inside and out. We also do facilities related work as well. So lots of roofs of maybe some of your hospitals in here too. So that's where I'm coming from. I did go to Penn State for actually a Penn State New Kensington, which I know they have a big biomed program there. I was in the first year of electrical engineering there. Did not take the biomed track. I wish I did though. Back, I don't even know how long ago that was now. But. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to look at some code language. I'm going to try not to make it too boring. It is code language and it has changed if you're Joint Commission, if you're DNV or another authority having jurisdiction. Hasn't changed this year. We're going to talk about your organization's policy. What is your policy around documenting this type of thing? Do you have the ability to change that? Do you have to go to somebody? Is there a committee that needs to change that policy? We're going to talk about asset inventory. That's really the key for the whole thing, is having a good inventory and tracking it that way. And then we'll have time for Q&A. I will say if you have a question during, feel free to raise your hand. I'll try to see you. Sometimes I get lost up here, but I'll try to call it out. But if you have a question in the context of what we're doing, feel free to ask while we're going. It's more fun that way. So what we're going to talk about is reviewing the code language, and what does the code say, and probably more importantly, what doesn't it say? And there's not a lot. If you are Joint Commission, we'll talk about that. So just a little bit about some of the authorities having jurisdiction. Joint Commission started, now it's just JC, Joint Commission. There's no THA. There's no JCHO, they get really mad if you say the Joint Commission now, so don't do that. Make sure you're practicing saying Joint Commission. So we had to edit all our slides and change it to JC. Also, HFAP started in 65. They've switched to the ACHC, American Accreditation of Healthcare something, or I forget what the thing stands for. And then definitely don't ask me what DNV stands for. Some Finnish word or something that started out in boating, but they didn't start doing accreditation of hospitals until 2008. So they're relatively new, but they're also one of the second largest here. But just a quick poll. How many are Joint Commission accredited? Oh, a lot, most of the room. Anyone DNV? All right, you're the lucky ones that didn't have to change anything. And then any other ACHC or CIHQs in the room? No. It's usually what I find. And it matches this. Joint Commission's about, it took me a while to find this information. Thank goodness for ChatGPT nowadays. You used to be able to search for this and try to find out how many there are. But about 83% of the hospitals now are Joint Commission. And DNV is about 11, and then ACHC and CHQ are rounding up the bottom there with them. So I know there was a while back where DNV was taking over a lot of hospitals. I'm not sure of the growth of those as well, but a lot of people have been switching between them. A lot of reason for that too is as hospitals acquire other systems, you might have been Joint Commission, but the system that acquired you is DNV, so now you're forced into DNV, or not forced, but just helping to align the organization around those things. So some of where the language is found. In Joint Commission, it was previously under, a lot of the medical equipment That's actually not what the word is for the medical equipment, but that's where it now is located. And PE, it stands for physical environment. So if you're in the Joint Commission world, all the ECs, the environment of care, and LSs got taken away. LS was life safety, a lot on the facility side. Now everything's in the physical environment space, which really aligns a lot with DNV. If you're in DNV, there's a lot of physical environment ones as well. The medical equipment management is in PE7 in DNV, and then in the other ones are located CIHQ, it's in CE8. I did not have the ACHC one on this slide. Also, if you have the other authorities having jurisdiction, state, local, make sure you're adhering to your requirements there as well. Usually they're around the same as the BIMED. I just don't know every city, every state, state's requirement for this presentation. So this is one of the older EPs here. Let me see. I don't have the where the hospital manages medical equipment risk. So this is the older one. So I'm going to show you where this goes away at a certain point. But for hospitals that don't use the Joint Commission accreditation for deemed status, so if you are using Joint Commission, and this is the Joint Commission language, by the way, you have to maintain a written inventory of all your medical equipment, risk associated, put a physical risk associated with that equipment. If you've been to some of the other sessions this morning, they talk about risks and criticalities and making sure when you're doing part of that inventory, you're getting that information. But the key here is determining whether or not they should be included in your inventory. Now you'd need to have your, any equipment in the inventory, but that's going to be how we talk about unable to locate. If you can't find it, is it really in your inventory? That's the we'll get into that a little bit later, but you do need to have a written inventory of all medical equipment. You also need to associate with to test and maintain this medical equipment. So there's some testing around high-risk equipment. So high-risk equipment is what you decide is high risk. That's the fun part of this whole thing about your requirements. You get to decide your formula for picking what is high-risk equipment or scoring it, what falls into high risk. It's like a test you have to pass to get it right. So you don't want to score the equipment with whatever strategy you have, whatever criteria you have. That's usually in your hospital policy on what that looks like. So if you're in charge of that policy, it's something to review. Make sure your staff is aware of that. If you're not aware of that, make sure you look at, reach out to your manager, directors to see what that policy is. And what happens, part of that scoring is if that equipment fails, what are the consequences? What are the risks of that equipment? It's usually what makes it fall into high risk. There are some other factors that usually put it in the high risk category as well. But the key here is that, in the previous code, you must have 100% completion rate. So you must complete inspections of 100% of your high risk assets. And that's where we get into if you can't find it, how do you perform an ITM on it? So that's again where if it's in the inventory, you have to do that. I'm giving you the hints of what's coming in here. So, but also with non-high risk equipment. So any of that medical equipment you score that's not high risk, and they don't use the term low risk. It's not high risk because there's a risk associated with everything. They don't want to make you think that there's low risk to something. There's a risk with any of this equipment should it fail, but also has 100% in completion rate. And if you're doing alternative equipment maintenance on that, you also have to have 100% completion rate on those assets as well. So they took out a lot of the language around AEM in 2026. But the key here is whether it's high risk or non-high risk, both have that or the requirement of 100% completion rate. So how that's changed is the hospital maintains. I feel like my headings are missing from my slides when they copied my presentation over to this. So I did have the headings of all these on here. I'm not sure what happened with my slides on this particular computer because it is a little confusing to me why they're not showing up. But basically, And this would say the PE 040101 at the top. The conditions of it refers specifically to the conditions of participation to 482.41 D2. And we'll show you that in a second. But there was a crosswalk. Anyone who was Joint Commission, if you saw that crosswalk, I just did a search for anywhere where those other EPs showed, where this PE 040101 showed up. There were 54 places where that showed up. And those previous slides I showed here were EC 02040101 EP2, 020403 EP2, and 02043 EP3. Those were included. Those previous 3 slides were from those old ECs. And there were 54 total, so 51 additional EPs where that is it. This is the full text of PE 040101. I forget which EP it is, because again, that's on the heading of the slide. So here is paragraph 482.41 D2, and where it comes from. Here's the specific EPs here. This is from the crosswalk itself, and you can see that it's a deleted EP, and now it's, hey, look, it's PE 040101 EP2 is the one that it's there. So PE 040101. I just copied the slides and put them in here. So this is, again, the full text of all this code language that I showed before is now, however many words that is, 7, 8 words there. That's what you have to adhere to if you're Joint Commission. If you're DNV, again, you'll see those as well. I do have a link in here at the bottom to where I got this information from. So I think they're giving out the slides to attendees, I'm not sure. So basically, this is the hospital must be constructed, arranged, maintained, ensure the safety of the patient, and provide facilities for diagnosis. So it lumps actually, there's no specific medical equipment section. Facilities and HTM are included in the same space now under the Joint Commission. There's still a little bit of separation in the DNV world with the PE7 for medical equipment. A lot of that language in the DNV is a little bit more specific than what Joint Commission is now. I don't know if they're going to get less specific either. I don't know if there's a push from CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, to do that or not. I know that's where the push came from for the Joint Commission, but this is what ultimately we're adhering to. And then facility supplies and equipment must be maintained to ensure the acceptable level of safety and quality. So that's what we're really here for. We're really here for patient safety, guest safety, quality of care, and whatever you're doing is to support that notion. But there's all the details went away for the Joint Commission and what they did. So there is a document here about the maintenance requirements. This is actually the CMS. It's from cms.gov. So if you see the logo up there, that's actually a link as well where you could download that on how to do some of those things. So again, we're ultimately all adhering, regardless of who we're using for our accreditation. It's ultimately going up to CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid. I don't know why there's only one M in that one. Maybe not to conflict with CMMS. That might be the reason there. But it does say, medical equipment refers to devices intended to be used for diagnostic, therapeutic, or monitoring care provided to a patient by a hospital. And we are talking about hospitals here. There are different languages and different documents for freestanding EDs, other types of long-term care. Where most of my stuff, that I think all of it, I'm taking from the hospital side of things, because that's what most of us are here. Anyone here not hospital, working in another type of facility for medical? Nope. So I did pull some DNV, everything under PE7, a little bit more detail on the DNV side. So if you are Joint Commission and you feel like you're lacking some things, in what the new language is, it might be helpful to go into some of the DNV code or even the CIHQ code or the ACHC codes and really look at all of them, understand all of them, and maybe build your policies around those as well. That way, if you do switch, you're kind of covering all your bases. But there's, like I said, there's a little bit more information here in the on the DMV side. So some takeaways from the code. You know, both the Joint Commission and DNV are vague, very vague. Joint Commission even more vague. They used to be a lot more detailed. You know, if you search the Joint Commission code now for AEM or alternative equipment, you don't find it. It's literally not there. So that's why we still refer to some of the old code. It doesn't change what you're doing, but some of that's there. But the key here is whether or not to include it in the inventory, whether or not it's found. You know, I recommend using your asset status to track that information. High risk versus non-high risk. Again, pointing out both have 100% completion rate. You need to report on both of them. You do need to report on them separately, so you still want to make sure you're scoring those, and then showing your completion rates for high risk versus non-high risk. So let's talk a little bit about the policy behind what you're doing. And again, it's your policy. It's your not your personal policy, but your hospital's policy, and sort of what you're defining, what was defined prior to you coming, what you might have the authority to define or help redefine. If you are Joint Commission, again, you might want to just make sure if you haven't looked at your policy or somebody in your organization hasn't looked at it since the changes, make sure that you're not referring to specific old code languages. They don't like that. You know, so make sure, you know, if you have specific call outs to the old code language in your policy, you probably need to update that policy. So yeah, should you change it? That's, you know, on the DNV side, again, you're the lucky ones in this case. But basically, in your policy, here's some recommendations that we have. We actually put out a white paper a while back on some things you can do. But one is just to define, you know, what is in service? What's it in service equipment? Equipment that's in use, tested, ready to go, type of thing. So, you know, when do you take it out of service is going to be what we're doing it and talking about. How does the team document attempts to locate? How are you doing that now? How many attempts are required? Is that something that's in your policy? And we'll talk about strategies around that. I'm sure there's a wide variety of answers of how people look for those things. You know, how do you communicate that missing equipment to whoever owns it? Usually the cost center that owns it or the department. Who owns that equipment? Do they know that it's missing? Do they know where it's at? You know, can they help you find it? Everyone probably, yep, they help me all the time locate where it is. So no. When do you mark the device as inactive? Again, when do you take that out of your inventory? And then what happens when you do find it? So when you do find it, what's your strategy, what's your policy around making sure you're putting it back in service with the proper documentation? And then how does all of this impact your compliance reporting? How are you reporting on all this to whatever standards you're adhering to? And again, we'll get into the details of some of those as well on when we get to the inventory part, which we're going to talk about next. So, you know, how does asset inventory fit into this whole thing? Again, it has to be in your inventory to track completion rate. If it's not in your inventory, how are you going to track that you did work on it? You definitely don't want them to find something that's not in your inventory. Like, I don't have any record of this piece of equipment. If it's something from another hospital that got into your hospital somehow too, you need to have a policy around that as well. Like if, you know, something came in on an ambulance for a transfer, it's not your equipment, what's your policy around that, using that equipment? You know, do you put your own equipment on them? When do you do that? You know, do you have the inspection? You know, do they have a sticker on theirs? You know, you're relying on what you're not testing either. There's a term that's making its way. It's large on the facility side. It's making its way into some of the code language as well. It's an ITM. So a lot of people are used to the word PM, preventive maintenance, but it's inspection, testing, and maintenance. A lot of time you're inspecting it, you're testing the piece. You're not really performing maintenance on it. So that's some of the terminology you're going to see in this presentation, and some other things as well. Kind of like HTM, like, you know, HTM was a relatively new term. It was biomed. Some people are still like, we're biomeds, we're not HTM, or clinical engineering. It seems like every 10 years, people just like to change terms on things. So if you do see ITM, just know that it stands for inspection, testing, and maintenance. So it could include one or all three of those, depending on what you're finding with that. And then we'll talk about best practices for inventory. Some of these are from my personal experience. Some of these are from some code language as well. I pulled this one actually right out of the CIHQ language on what they're looking for in the inventory. So some type of unique identification number, whether that's a barcode sticker you're putting on, property of whatever hospital system you're working for, manufacturer model, serial number, big part of that for recalls. You do want to have that as well. A description of the equipment, location of the equipment. If it's fixed, so like an MRI machine, probably not moving around. But a lot of your equipment is mobile. That's why we have this presentation. So if you can't find your MRI machine, you got bigger problems than this presentation helping you out. But you do want to track it, especially if it's a fixed location. If it's not, then that's where the department is going to, who owns that? That's the ownership part of that. So who is the owner? Is it imaging? Is it nursing? Is it ICU? Where should that equipment live most of the time? Understandably, they're not always there. So if there's a service provider, a vendor that comes in and works on that, who is that person? What is their criteria? Acceptance date, sometimes installation date, so when did that go into service? And then any additional information that might be useful for proper management of the equipment, a photo, maybe a photo of the model, maybe a link to the service manual, lots of different other items there. That's more of a recommendation on the side, but how do you get to how does the technician get to the information they need quickly to maintain that equipment properly through procedures, or if you have to do OEM, original equipment manufacturer instructions to maintain that equipment, or if you're doing your own instructions as part of your AEM, alternative equipment maintenance policy as well. I think there was another AEM presentation earlier today, if I'm not mistaken. So as part of this, part of the asset life cycle is performing your asset inventory. So step one is, do you have an inventory, a list of all your assets? And that should live in your CMMS, your computerized maintenance management software. That's going to be your source of truth for what was done to that equipment, what's the useful life of that equipment, when do you need to replace that equipment, what are all your compliance reporting. That's what your CMMS is for. I want you to do the inventory. Do you have your schedule built out? How are you doing your schedules? Are you doing them on a department basis, an equipment type basis? Every April we do this department, every May we do this other department. Then the trick is, finding that equipment. Hopefully you could find it, and then performing the ITM. So for the equipment you do find, perform it, test it, make sure it passes. As part of that, you can evaluate the life of the equipment, evaluate the condition of that equipment. You might have to repair or replace that equipment based on maybe some of your assessments of what that equipment, what condition that's in. Verify anything, including the schedules. Put your stickers on, your expiration date or last tested date or whatever you're putting on with different colored stickers or different dates on the stickers. And then verify in the asset inventory that it's still there. Track your last inspected date. That's key to help finding it as well. If you're doing it on a work order, where did you last perform that work order? Where was that at when you found it last? That might help you keep a trail of where that equipment might be in the future. If it's always in a certain area, then all of a sudden it's not. You could talk to people in that area and maybe go to another area to do that as well. So, but this is never done. You're never done with this one. I was at a presentation earlier today. He's like, verify your equipment asset inventory quarterly, which I probably, but if you're doing it on an ongoing basis, every time you're doing the PMs, you're constantly keeping your inventory up to date, especially if you're not finding it. So that took me like 20 minutes to build that, by the way. So just to let you know. So just to make it look like a stamp. So as part of your ITM, part of your PM, process. One, if you have the ability to capture questions or answer questions or readings about that, is the equipment still here? Yes or no? Obviously you can't perform any other maintenance if you can't find it. Again, what is the condition of that? If there's a specific condition, it's beat up, it's cracked, the cords are loose, all the electrical stuff you're doing, but visually, what type of condition it's in. And then if you need to change anything about that asset, like the condition field, the status, change the schedule, you need to PM it more often. Maybe the schedule was wrong. So are you verifying all those things around it? As new equipment comes in, maybe somebody did schedule it incorrectly. So making sure you understand what it should look like and make modifications to that, again, every time. And we recommend this on anyone doing maintenance in any part of the area. Equipment gets beat up, and that's something that's usually not part of the regular OEM manufactured tests as part of that PM. So one thing you could do is use, when you can't find it though, that's the other key. What happens when you can't find it? How do you locate it? Using technology to assist. So one item, is an RTLS system, real-time location system, and it can help you find equipment. So anyone here using an RTLS system, maybe about half the room, anyone here find it reliable? Yeah. So for those of you thinking about RT, I'm not RT. It's helpful. I feel it's as good as your Wi-Fi at this point. Most of it is based on Wi-Fi. And I found this, so I started doing some digging as to why it doesn't. Wow, that's a fun slide. So taking presentations to different computers is fun, but there are different types of items. And notice there's only one. There's another one down here: ultrasonic RTLS and UWB, which I think is like ultra wideband, I believe is what it stands for. Those are the two with high accuracy. I didn't know this existed until I was like, why are they all? So I feel like in the old days, before Wi-Fi, when they were using their own sensors and tracking where they were, it was a little bit more reliable. You can actually track where these things were, because RTLS companies were around well before Wi-Fi came into the system, but they all started piggybacking off the Wi-Fi. But accuracy of Wi-Fi RTLSs are medium. There's some other ones down here. So it's also lower cost. So people go into an RTLS. You go with the cheaper option. It's not going to be as accurate as I think the cost of the ultra wideband here. I forgot to have the laser here. Is high. Oops, high. High on that one. So the very top line there is high. Yes, sir. Yeah. I had someone tell me that they were inspecting something once a year, but the battery lasts about 9 months. So how does that work out? So you almost need to, like, when you're inspecting it, like turn the sleep for 6 months, and then that's what they need to get to. But yeah, I saw another hand go up over here. Say that again. Yeah, the tag size. They're too big. Too big. Yeah. So the tags are too big. That's another item. It's like I said, just hinders an RTLS system. So there's some work that needs done. They are useful. People, I've seen yeah, they're useful. But just know some of those potential hiccups with that. So if you're getting one, I've had one person, it's the greatest thing in the world. What makes it work for that person? And then think about this slide, do I have the wrong type of technology with my RTLS? So here's just a visualization. If you can see where your assets are located, here's a visualization of what that might look like. Potentially in an RTLS system or a CMMS system if you do an integration. That's what we have an integration to an RTLS. So like I said, I'm not for or against RTLSs. If you have one, we could load that stuff and help you locate that equipment as well, and actually see what's next to that piece of equipment. So as you're doing a sweep of a room, instead of looking, it'll help you find where that equipment's located. So using humans. Anyone still have humans at your hospital? So, how can we use people to help us find? So again, we're going to consider what's considered in use. So search the potential, obviously, some of this is obvious, but search the potential locations where an asset might be stored or used. Every time, I've talked to so many people that have, there's a nurse somewhere at your hospital that hides equipment somewhere at your hospital, whether it's in a closet, whether it's in a ceiling tile. Anyone found one in the ceiling? So I see a couple hands going up. So where that might be stored. So look for any open service requests on that particular asset. Maybe you're looking for it and it's in the shop. I've heard that numerous times. You're looking all over for it and it's right there in your shop. Or is it out for a vendor repair? Another thing, if you send it out and you're looking for it, again, depending on the information you're tracking. That's why if you're tracking everything, all your service requests, all your PMs, everywhere that's location changes, that can be very helpful in trying to locate this thing. Where was it last, and when was it that last there? Verified to be there. Obviously, contacting the department director manager that owns the asset, or checking, with other hospitals. I talked about that earlier, where if equipment goes out on an ambulance to another hospital, what's your interaction with them? Is it a monthly thing where you go back and every month you meet in a parking lot somewhere at night and switch out all your assets, give them back to each other? What's your policy around those things as well? But the main thing here is documenting all that stuff. If you are contacting them, you're just calling them, are you writing that down? I talked to this person on this date, and they said they looked for it. Or is you doing the email communication? Are you saving a PDF of that email as part of the history of that work ticket that you're looking for that? Again, it's all around documentation, tracking that documentation as well. If you didn't document, you probably heard this many times. If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. So if you're not keeping track of that, and maybe you do have a little pocket piece of paper. I've had people that, here's the assets I need to look for next month. They write it down. If that gets lost or misplaced or wet, whatever the reason is, you might lose that information as part of that as well. And then when you're looking for those, do you have a work order to look for that piece of equipment? What's the work order status? If you have an ITM work order that comes out and you complete it, you just change it to complete, tested, complete, passed, complete, whatever your statuses are, you define those in your CMMS as well. Can you change the asset status? As part of that, if I make a work order not found, could you automatically change the asset status to not found? And then not found, what is that in your system? Is that not in your inventory as part of what you're looking for? And then what's your follow-up plan for finding it? When do you look again? And we'll ask some questions here as well, but do you look next month? Is that what your policy is, or is that what you're trained to do? Do you look next cycle? So if it's a yearly PM, it's due April 2026. I didn't find it. If I don't find it in April 2027, then I take it out of my inventory. Some people use the 3 strikes, you're out. I'll look for it in May, June, and July. If I don't find it, then I take it out of my inventory. So anyone doing something out of those two, those seem to be the most common ones that I see, but I'm glad. I do want to hear another one. I don't have a third example. So if you do, feel free to come up later if you're shy and don't want to talk on that. But and then next month, what are you doing next month? Do I need to reschedule the ITM? Do I need to create a work order for next month for that equipment that I couldn't find? How am I documenting that? If you're documenting in the notes, I looked for it. Are you struggling to find those notes later if you're under, during a document review? Does that help you report on numbers, how many times you look for it? So my recommendation is every time you look for it, maybe make another work order for that. That way you have a clear, like, this is my work order to look for this. I could track easily, how many attempts I made, other things like that. I hear so many times, people, technicians put things in the notes, couldn't find it. Even on the facility side, there's an exhaust fan on the roof or something that got taken out. PMs are still coming out for it. They put in the notes, but no, the managers aren't looking at the notes. Nobody's looking at the notes. So as part of your feedback loop, which I talked about earlier, is the equipment still here? If there was a no question, can that generate a work order for somebody to say, hey, maybe that technician doesn't have the ability to take things out of inventory, but it goes to the manager or supervisor where they take it out, or the CMMS administrator where they take that out of inventory. So think of where that work gets routed to and who performs that operation. If you don't want your technicians taking things out of inventory, then make sure you're getting it to the right person that does have that ability in your CMMS to do that. And then make sure when you're reporting, include those numbers of unable to locate. Now, there's no rule about this, but if it's, hey, we were unable to locate 75% of our assets, yeah, that's probably not good. So I don't say that, but there's some number out there. It's like, yeah, well, what is the right number? I don't have an answer for that one. I did see the guy from DNV. If you ever have a chance to see Kelly Proctor from DNV do a talk, he goes through a lot of great examples on some of this stuff. But yeah, there's some number there that's useful. Is it a couple percent on a monthly basis? Like, what is that right number? So like I said, if you're finding it to be what seems like a large amount that you're unable to find, look harder, I guess. Think of, anyone have kids that look for something, and hey, go find this, and then 2 minutes later, like, nope, I couldn't find it. No, maybe look a little harder. Look, think about where it was or where it might be, and do a better job of trying to locate it as well. So. Also on the training side of things, what's the clinical staff, the people using the equipment, the people hooking it onto a patient, are they looking at the tag? Are they trained? What is a lot of people, I've seen different colored tags for different years. That way, if if it's out of compliance, they're not supposed to use it and not supposed to hook it to a patient or put it on a patient. So what is that expiration date? Are they including it in their training on what this is? Who trains those people to know what your policy is around those and what those look like? So do you have communication between the clinical staff and the support staff? And then what do they do when the equipment is, I use the word unsafe, but if it's not tested, it's not safe. That's the basic idea is, even if it's like, today is what, April 8th, so if it was March 31st it expired, they should not be using that piece of equipment. So again, your internal staff, searching for equipment on these. I think I forgot to delete some things here, so those are some of the other items there. But again, make sure you're documenting those pieces of that item on the training. So when you find it, huzzah, we found it. We found the piece of equipment. So however many months, years, anyone have years? They found something years old, 4 years old? Where was it? It was in somebody's closet somewhere? Okay. So hopefully they didn't use it. But the basic gist of it is you found it. Doesn't, obviously it's untested because you didn't find it before. So retest it, document the test, make sure it passes, and then you could put it back into service. If it fails the test because it's been out too long or whatever reason, and you fix it, make sure when you fix it, you do retest it again, and make sure you document the retest. One thing again from Kelly Proctor from DNV, probably the number one, I think it was one of the number one things they ding people on, technical term, dinged. In Joint Commission, I think it's dung. They have to use different languages there, but not, it fails, you retest it and it passes. Many people don't document the retest, don't have that retest document in there as well. So once you do repair it, document the retest, and then put it back into service. So the key, again, is documenting all of this stuff. So brief summary here. Look for the look for it. Obviously, that's the whole. You do have to find it. That's if you do have the technology there, an RTLS system, or considering an RTLS system, again, think of the different types of RTLSs, technologies that are out there. I recommend creating a follow-up work. Do I need to? Is it a work order to change the ITM? Is it a work order to change the asset status? Can I do that automatically through my CMMS? But create follow-up work. If you're tracking it with work orders are your system of record of, I did something, I looked for it, I went to find it. Yes?
Standardization comes to mind, right? So a lot of times these things are manually entered into the CMMS, and you'll have like general electric,
Mm-hmm.
and then that will cause a problem, right? So you have the device input 4 times or in just different ways. So what are some of the strategies you think you've seen that help that standardization?
So some strategy around standardization of things like company names or device types, or it's just some quick strategies around standardizing some of the fields you're using. One, form a committee within your, even if it's in your department, of who those people are that are going to find those. Limit who can add new manufacturers or new companies to it. So if somebody does that, GE is a great example. You see GE, you see General Electric, you see G.E. You see, and some are different capitalizations, capital G, lowercase e. You've seen them all. Those are bad ones. I just seen one on the facility side, Bell and Gossett. They make a pump, 19 different ways it was spelled in the system. With those types of things. So definitely have a way to standardize those. If you can, if your system allows you to merge them together under one company name, it does take some time, but it also takes, again, on the asset inventory side, when you're capturing the manufacturer, who has the ability to change those things? Same thing with the equipment types. Do you have a standard list of equipment type if you're going to report on imaging equipment versus different types of modalities, other types of modalities in there? Are you tracking those things? Again, what's the list? Is it comprehensive? Is it the right number? Do you have thousands of device types, or do you have 20 or 30 device types in more general categories? It does make it easier to classify it but it doesn't give you the same granularity. So you have to sort of weigh those things out. And then when you're reporting on them, you could get better numbers on, what are the types of devices you can't find? Is it one manufacturer that's getting, has a high, sale rate on eBay? Is that the reason it keeps disappearing? Certain types of things that are hard to find, but. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some CMMS is like, if you track it at the model level, so start at the model, when you're adding a new company or model to that. Again, if somebody doesn't look for that, and track it, a lot of times, you do have to have some manual knowledge of what your data is before you just start adding it. Something we're doing to look at, like, how do we prevent, that's a huge problem with our customers, is that same company appearing, and then somebody gets new equipment and doesn't look, and then adds another company. Does the system prevent duplicates? What does that look like? And if they get a duplicate error, are they just going to put a period after it? Some people are lazy and just do it. So the biggest thing is restricting who can do that. I mean, that's, it doesn't have to be one person, but is there a group of people that are trained to do it the right way? I've seen the planner position or asset inventory, you lead technician or lead somebody that has that ability to add equipment. Where does that go through? What's your asset intake form look like? Can you default things for have someone review that information prior to going into production with those things? But that's sort of the main thing around standardization, is it takes time. It takes more time to clean it up than to have less people do it. Like, yeah, it's like, oh, I got to enter in all these assets, or this group of people assets. Yep. But 2 or 3 years down the road, you're going to have a huge mess, especially with the dates and departments and who owns it. Like I said, that list on the inventory slide of what you're tracking is you need to be anal about it, for lack of a better term, if you really want to report and track this stuff properly. So those are just some brief strategies around that inventory part. So, and the inventory part, something I've done for years. Like before, like, you know, some fields didn't have, there was all free text, and we just got in the habit, like, here's how we're going to spell this, here's how we're going to do this, we're going to capitalize this, and our team would, you know, trained on doing that. A lot of people just say, hey, we need inventory stuff, and like, you do this floor, you do this floor, you do this floor, you do that floor. Well, you have some of the similar things on the same floor, and people call them different things. And you know, some people put, oh, I'm going to put a, you know, defibrillator dash something, and somebody's going to put the thing in front of the defibrillator. And you know, things on med gas valve. You know, somebody will put med gas shutoff, somebody will put med gas valve, somebody will put. So you do have to have some type of naming convention, category convention on doing those things. So, and then sticker-wise, you know, are you putting the sticker in the same place? You know, the sticker is always going to go by the nameplate or on the back, or, you know, so it's like, you know, not in the middle of the screen. I've not seen that yet, but only a matter of time before someone puts it right. Yeah, you'll never miss this sticker. Somebody will do that. But again, standards for everything. You have to think of standards for every little thing that you do. And I've seen inventory sheets, we put them together at our company of like, so, you know, most things are top right corner if it's a fixed piece of equipment or near the nameplate. But there's always exceptions, like something else is there. Somebody put another sticker there. So what do you do with it? Or somebody doesn't want it visible to the patient. So you got to hide stickers, you know, on certain things and make them easy to find, but hide them. So that's the, there's lots of rules to adhere to, you know, when you're doing things like that. But, and then, say that one more time, I'm sorry. Yeah. A lot of time, you know, for the compliance with Joint Commission or GMP, it's around the device type and what it's used for, and also the manufacturer and model. But with those, you know, since everything falls under the same, even in the old ECs, like the medical equipment, there was not much variance in where those things fell. On the facility side, there was. So if it wasn't marked as an exit light properly, then yeah, there was a specific EP specifically for exit lights, where the medical equipment didn't really have that granularity, and it's even less now. So usually it's for compliance, you're okay, but if you're starting to do reporting on, you know, on your capital planning side of what models are failing and what manufacturers are failing, you're gonna have a graph, a pie chart that's literally 1%, like unreadable pie chart. Versus for your top failures. So standardizing is important. If you want to add on.
Or on third-party service contract, because we have this, or we have so much of these devices that we didn't realize we had. Maybe we should do some in-house training. So standardization across the board touches so many.
Mass edit is a friend. I know some CMMSs have it, some don't, but mass edit is a good tool. I see a hand going up over here. Yes. You know, one person, it's like, you're ultimately, if this is bad, it's ultimately on you to say this is bad too. And that's the one thing too that's appearing in the code language too is, do you have a qualified individual to run the department? That's another term that's been showing up, and they're checking that now. Where before it was like, hey, you got promoted to clinical engineering manager. Do you have the credentials to be a clinical engineering manager or not? And if you don't, that's a huge ding on your department if you don't. So again, that's something that's they're looking at more and more. So do you have that qualified individual running the department, but also is everyone qualified to work on that equipment as well? So are you tracking your certifications and those things on in your CMMS, and does that appear on your compliance documentation? So I forgot where I was, so I'm just going to start over from the beginning. So, no. Again, changing your equipment status. I talked about this a number of times. You know, if you put it to could not locate or unable to perform, or if it's in use. I think that was a top. You asked me about that earlier. If we're going to talk about if you find it, but it's in use by a patient, you know, what does that mean? And visually, if you do a visual inspection of that piece of equipment and it's keeping a patient alive, is that efficient, sufficient enough to say this is a working piece of equipment? I did the inspection on this. Yeah, I might not be able to do the full testing on that one to make sure, you know, your dosages or voltages or whatever are correct, but it is in use. It is keeping someone, you know, alive. So it technically passes the visual inspection part of that thing. So again, also from Kelly Proctor from DMV, who used that as an example. So if he's here, stand up. I'd be honored if he was here. So, look again and again and again and again. That's actually 4 strikes, but you know, what's your policy? Is it 3 strikes? Is it cycle? Is it, you know, how many times are you looking for that before you officially quit looking for it? Like, again, do you take it out of your inventory when you start looking for it? But when is it completely out of your, there's 2 states of being in your inventory. Like, it's, we think it's still here, and then we're not looking for it anymore with that. So hopefully it's, but you still 4 years later might find it somewhere. And then, you know, like I said, deactivate that, whatever your methodology for deactivating that is. If we're looking, you know, how to report on this type of data, you know, are reporting on multiple facilities? You pull out the example. If you do have multiple facilities, this is where that standardization comes in as well. Great segue. Thank you, everybody. You know, how are we reporting across our organizations? It seems like a while back, hospitals were merging and merging and merging, and then they started splitting up into smaller hospitals. Now we're back to merging and merging and merging again. That cycle is going to continue, but you know, how do we make it easier? You know, how does the industry standardize? That's what we ultimately need to get to. Like, why can't we call this type of equipment the same for whatever hospital you're at? This is what it is. And so if you're using things like ECRI to classify your equipment, that's great, but not everybody is. So what is the real standard around those things? And you know, if you go from your hospital to another hospital, why do you have to reinvent the wheel? And as hospitals merge, why are we constantly just making data look the same? If we all started out being the same, this is, you know, hopefully we could get Amy, and, you know, I know Amy has some things going on as well to help standardize the industry. But how do we get that pushed out to every hospital system, you know, and get them to adopt it? That's ultimately, that's what my goal is, you know, is to make my life easier in what I do, but also make everybody's life easier. Like, and then even the code standards, like, why do I have to tell you what's high risk? Like, you know, this is high risk. Why do I have to write a policy that makes it high risk? You know it is already. Anyway, I'm gonna go off my soapbox here. So when you're reporting on these things, you know, this report here is actually a status exclusion. So when I'm reporting on my completion, I'm actually excluding my active, unable to locate work from this. So I'm taking those out, and that's my work order status. So anything that's part of that, I'm leaving that out of my report. I also have a classification here. It's hidden by the drop down of, or I can report on high risk. I can report my high risk and non-high risk differently. And even here we have our classifications: high risk AEM. You can do AEM on some high risk equipment. High risk OEM, original equipment manufacturer. We're also tracking them, you know, which ones are coming in from vendors. So we're trying to be grand, like, so we know exactly where this is being done. I thought I saw your hand starting to go up. Did you have a question? I'll take that as a no. Yeah. Yeah.
on maintaining an accurate inventory without spending resources going out to stores to look for these, high volume devices, thermometers, things like that.
So strategy around things that you're not performing ITNs on, your run-to-fail type equipment, you're obviously not looking for it, so that would be one thing. But on some, and this is my opinion based on talking to others, is are you willing to take the hit on something like that if you're not doing it? So, what's the hit on something that's low risk, or sorry, non-high risk? And what type of finding, what type of write-up is that going to get you? Is that going to make you fail your inspection versus the time it takes to keep all that documentation up to date and track it all? That's your decision to weigh the pros and cons of that. But I've seen managers on both the facilities and clinical side, more on the facility side, that are like, I don't have time to test every exit light. They're all on generator power. I don't need to visually inspect them. If one's burned out, someone will report it. So what am I really doing? Why am I wasting all this time doing this when my failure, like I rarely see one burned out. I rarely see one with a arrow pointing the wrong way, which anyone ever seen that? That's fun too. Exit light pointing to that wall right there. It's like, that's not good. But you really have to check that every month, which is part of the old code requirements. Now those are kind of relaxed a little bit, so you could write policies around those things, or like I said, take the hit. Like what's the risk of taking the hit? Now on medical equipment, obviously your high risk equipment, that's something you're not going to do. But on your non-high risk equipment, is it worth it to take the hit or not take the hit? Is probably the question. Like if I get dinged on this, what happens? That's probably the best way to answer that question. So, yes.
Just in regards to for unable-to-locate stuff, as far as the PMs that you did here that you excluded from the report, or you have SLAs that are out there, or even the next PM you gave, are those all like what should it be when you did it, or year it's annual and year from when it was approved? Is that all dictated by the policy for the hospital or by the accreditation?
By the policy, like it's more your policy. The accreditation is, like I said, those 8 words. So, if you want to be a top performing hospital, and are you doing everything it takes for that patient to be safe? Is looking for it 2 years down the road and keeping it out of your inventory, is that ultimately in the best interest of the patient? Or is really doing your due diligence and looking for it quarterly or 2 times in a year, or whatever your policy is, what are you really trying to do? When do you take it out of your inventory? Maybe your policy is, we didn't find it, but we don't have it. Like that's our policy. Like that could be it too. But it's ultimately in your policy how you handle that particular piece of equipment. So again, a great segue again. So you do want to define your policy. That's the key to all of this. Your policy is going to dictate a lot of this. If you have a policy, some of you don't get to define it, but check it, especially if you're a joint commission. Probably a good time to recheck it. It's only April. Has anyone been inspected under the new joint commission stuff yet? You have? Anything different? Okay. So emphasis on AEM. It's interesting because AEM is not mentioned in joint commission, the new language. So neat. That was a big thing I think last year or the year before too. AEM, your AEM strategy. But again, maintain your asset inventory as part of your ITM program or PM program. Again, keeping track of all that stuff on a regular basis. If you're not changing asset statuses when you're not finding stuff, start doing that. That would be my first recommendation to put things in the inventory. Maybe you have a couple different statuses that have them in different categories. So you don't need 50 asset statuses, but a handful to track different. If you just have in use and not in use, that's probably not enough. But if you have 50, that's probably too many. So somewhere in between there. If you need some advice, feel free. I'll be down in the exhibit hall later. feel free to stop by and say hi. Ensure if you have procedures written, make sure they cover all your authorities having jurisdiction, not just the national. So if you are joint commission, don't just make sure you're adhering to the national, just make sure you do understand any other regional authorities having jurisdiction, at the state level or local level as well. Implement your ITM strategy, including your documenting your unable to locate or unable to perform is another term that we use. You just can't perform the ITM because it's in use on a patient. My recommendation is everything is a work order. I look for it, it's a work order. I'm going to go look for it next month, it's a work order. Those are easily reportable, by work order category. Have a category of searching for equipment. If it's tied to that asset, you could report on that. You see the exact dates of when that was done. Really easy to report on versus trying to dig through a notes field and who put notes in, or trying to find the technician's piece of paper that he wrote all that stuff down on. And then track your progress throughout the month, month to month. I also recommend tracking your progress throughout the year. People are very bad with CMMSs. Some people will do a mass edit and activate work orders from August of last year, and then all of a sudden you have all these that were changed. Hey, I want to change these to unable to locate, and they changed the wrong month of unable to locate of something. So if you have reports, make sure you have like a rolling report or static documentation, that's either printed or a PDF is made at the time that you write the report. If you're running dynamic reports, you do want to make sure that data is not getting inadvertently reactivated. So we've had customers inadvertently reactivate the year's worth or assign them and activate them. They forget to put a date range on a search. All of a sudden update 2,000 work orders to be something. So just a little bit about FSI. We will be down in the exhibit hall. We'll also be at the AMI conference. I think this is our booth from the AMI conference a couple years ago. So this is our team. We're a CMMS built for healthcare. We focus solely on healthcare, and we have compliance reporting built in. We're healthcare from the beginning. So for all authorities, not just Joint Commission. I know we use a lot of Joint Commission examples in here, but also DNV, HVAP, CIHQ, other compliance items. And when we hire right from HCM, HFM departments. Everyone on our support staff worked in an administrator role at a hospital, so they understand what your needs are. We'll support you through those inspections. We do monthly webinars for our customers, a user conference, free on annual user conference that we have for our customers as well. And then we have a neighborhood community. We are Pittsburgh-based. Sorry, Ravens fans, but we are Pittsburgh-based. So we stole Mr. Rogers' term for the neighborhood. So our community of customers interacting with each other. We feel customers talking to each other is a good thing. I would also recommend talking to customers in here as well, or other people you meet at the conference. You get a lot of good advice and stuff from them as well. But that's why we call it the neighborhood. Again, Joe Stockman with FSI. I'll pause for any questions. I think we're a little over, so apologies for lunch, but. All right, thanks. And I'll stick around here for a little bit if you have any questions individually. So.